Welcome back. Now it's time to talk head-to-head. Conservatives or Liberals? Anthony, when it comes to tackling the cost of living crisis, whether we're talking about unaffordable housing, food, or just turbulent interest rates, does Carney's background in global finance give him an edge over Poilievre, or does Poilievre's focus on affordability and tax cuts make more sense for struggling Canadians?
So let's do Poilievre first. So the one thing I will give him credit for on your show, because I want to be a little diplomatic here, is I love when he talks about getting rid of red tape and what he deems to be the gatekeepers in housing.
Yep.
There's a lot of baloney and bureaucracy, and if he can get that accomplished as Prime Minister, I will give him credit for that. I think Mark Carney has more experience on the national level and the global level for finance. So I think he understands the more overall picture.
Right.
I think that tax cuts right now are not really a wise idea. On a broader scale, because
you sound super liberal.
But we don't have any money, Jonathan. We have no money. This would be like me saying, I can't pay my mortgage, so I'm going to go work part-time next week, and hopefully that balances the budget.
We have a spending problem, though, because the way that our federal government has increased their budget over the last 10 years is pretty ridiculous, even inflation aside. But anyway, go on.
Yeah. Okay, so that would be my answer to that point. So yes, there were a lot of increases in spending. I know the biggest problem was the current deficit. That was a commitment we made to Indigenous welfare, and there was a lot of capital cost allowance that Conservatives love for businesses. So they should be quite happy with, I think, the $2.5 billion as a part of the deficit. So I would be putting my money on Carney for understanding the overall picture.
Right.
Pierre Poilievre is a career politician. He has not had one job in the private sector.
Yes.
How can I trust him as a voter that he knows what goes on in the private sector as a politician?
What I would suggest is that sometimes you vote more for the party's policy than you do for the party, or the individual, I should say, rather. So I think you get this a little bit down south with the whole Trump situation. Right now, I'll give you credit. You've done a good job of bringing me towards you on Mark Carney today, honestly, but not the Liberal Party. Not with the policies and not what they've done over the last 10 years.
Okay.
And so even though you can say, okay, Carney's got the experience in finance, the Conservative Party, and Poilievre is quite competent, but the Conservative Party has the right policies for today, in my opinion. So that's, I think, where we differ, but I can certainly appreciate your answer.
That's fine.
So Carney and the Liberals talk about a green future, but when Canadians are struggling to make ends meet, is now really the time for this agenda? So do you think that Canadians are willing to trade much needed immediate relief for long-term climate goals? Or is the Conservative focus on energy independence and financial stability, which is obviously the Conservative perspective, a more practical solution for people today?
This is the toughest question to answer, because I think right now we're in a stage where emotions are high and economic anxiety is quite tense. Okay, this reminds me of during the global financial crisis. So are people going to trade their financial security for what we'll call, I guess you would call it left-wing extremism? That's not going to happen. Okay, I think Canadians need a credible and viable plan to fight climate change and build the infrastructure we need to negate those effects. So you talked about energy and how the energy sector is destroyed. So I was on a panel on this news network about the clean technology that we can use to help lower our carbon emissions as we're using and extracting natural resources. Right. So why are we not making those investments as a country? Why are we not looking this as more of a national scale? Right? I think that's where we have to go with climate policy now. I'm not against getting rid of the carbon tax entirely. I like cap and trade. We've talked about this before. I think it's more well thought out. It's fair shared sacrifice, and it doesn't hit people in the pocketbook where it's supposed to.
Okay, so question for you. If we have enough natural gas in our country to power the world for over 200 years. So if we started offshoring that to countries that already want to have contracts with us, there's a really, really good argument to be made that we would be able to lower the global, because the green agenda should be a global issue, to lower the global carbon footprint more than we could with any of our policies. So why don't we just take our natural gas and offshore it, and then at the same time, fix our economy?
The last time you and I were on a clip together and I tried to describe to you how carbon dioxide enters the atmosphere, I think you won that clip. So methane, I think, is the byproduct of natural gas. There's a lot of questions about how much faster it traps heat and whatever for the planet. I'm not a scientist, folks, but that's just what I know about reading it. This is the crisis that our country's in right now with our energy sector. How do we make money and fight climate change? How do we do this in a responsible way? I think we can do better if, first of all, we have to have the courage to change as a country and understand that if there is cleaner technology out there, companies and the government have to partner and work together to make that transition so we can move to a green economy. I think that's the way we do it.
I feel like we're balanced. I feel like I think we just maybe need to work on a more holistic solution.
But if this was 2015, I would be talking more extreme because the times were different.
Yes. Final thought. Anthony, give me a prediction. If we see a federal election in the near future, who wins?
Oh, boy. Right now, I will say Pierre Poilievre. I still think he's going to win.